Pokémon Legends EA has been out for a few months now, and with the 30th anniversary Pokémon Day fast approaching, naturally our minds will start to look at what's next and upcoming in the Pokémon world. At the moment, we have no idea about anything official for the next Pokémon game, although leaks have flipped between two different countries that it could be based on, or different gimmicks that there might be, but here are my thoughts on what will come next, and how Legends EA will affect it. The last Legends game heralded the end of Generation 8, so it follows the next game that we can expect to be announced in February is the next generation of games. Not least because it happens to be the 30th anniversary of Pokémon this year, but also we have a new generation of consoles for the Switch too. This will be alongside spin-off games like Pokopia and Pokémon Champions. The first thing that comes to mind that's going to be included in this new game is the shiny noise. This was introduced in Legends Arceus and then removed in Scarlet and Violet, and then returned in Legends EA, with more obvious shiny sparkles in the overworld and increased catch-all rates, which is fantastic for those who love to shiny hunt.
And for those of you who feel only the darkness when a shiny flees from you.
On catching Pokemon though, I also love the free chance that we've got in Legends EA to catch a Pokemon when it's knocked out. This is much more like the anime and makes more sense that you get a chance to throw a ball at something before it gathers its senses and runs away. I really hope that this sticks around for Gen 10, especially considering the nightmare that is self-KOing moves like Explosion and Takedown for those with one hit point. And I could see this sticking around, even though it's never been introduced before, but it's highly possible. Next up is Mega Evolution. I don't necessarily expect that we'll get new Megas in Gen 10, since we had 26 in Legends EA and even more in the DLC. But with Pokémon Champions coming out next year as well, introducing the Omni Ring, which will let you Mega Evolve, use a Z move, Dynamax, and Terastallize, I can't see the cool new Megas being left behind less than a year after they were introduced. Combine that with the fact that Pokémon from Legends EA can't be sent backwards in Gen 8 or 9 games, and they have to be prepping for some sort of forward compatibility for the next game. To me, it's quite likely that we're going to have something like the Alola games, which had the Mega Evolution as part of the post-game, so as not to overshadow the new gimmick so much, whatever that may be. Speaking of compatibility, I think that every ZA Pokemon will be usable in Gen 10. There's no way that you wouldn't be able to use the friends you caught in ZA in Generation 10 since they can't be transferred back. Certain Pokemon like the Elemental Monkeys and the Watchog line didn't exist in any other Switch game, so to isolate them to the box immediately in Pokemon Home would kind of suck. For them, I don't care about them. But, you know, it would be mean for those Pokemon and those who like them, wherever you are. And if you're one that likes those Pokemon, comment down below and subscribe whilst you're here. Why not? And if you like any other Pokemon, also subscribe. Next up is the battle mechanics, and as much as people seem to enjoy the ZA battle system, I can't see the real-time battling sticking around outside of these spin-off games. This is again linked to the information we've seen so far for Champions, which shows the traditional turn-based battling, and given that Pokemon hasn't ever changed things up in the mainline games, I don't see that happening here. Although, if there was going to be a change, now would be the best time to do it. 30 years into the franchise, a huge shake-up that changes the main gameplay whilst not impacting the competitive scene would be possible, thanks to the official battle system being off to one side. This would mean we'd have to say goodbye to abilities forever though, because real-time battles with abilities would be far too complicated to deal with, which would render some Pokemon obsolete and force some real rebalancing. Slacking, for example, would need some real tinkering to make it useful within the system, because it's just so powerful. Shedinja would be completely useless. And Mega Medicham would need to have some sort of buff, like it had in Legends EA, giving it a much better physical attack because it lost pure power, which you really need because Medicham sucks. So this is what I think will have influenced the future games thanks to Legends EA and the things that the fans have really enjoyed. But with the new generation, we also have to consider the tropes of Pokemon. In Generation 5, we had a lot of direct replacements like Conkeldurr for Machamp, or Gothitelle for Alakazam, but beyond that, there's a ton of repeated themes we've come to expect from a Pokemon game to unify the regions to real-world locations. One of the rumours has been that we're going to be exploring Greek-style islands for Gen 10, which I find incredibly cool given my love for Greek mythology. So, based on these tropes, I'm going to give some speculations based on real-world elements for Greece. So let's get into this, starting off, well, with the starters, which is pretty straightforward entry, right? There will be a fire, water, and grass type Pokemon, which will have some secondary type interaction, as has been the case since Gen 6. Okay, apart from Gen 8, but we'll ignore that. Fighting and Dark have been the most commonly used secondary types since then, with those mixed into the trio. I'd like to see a new secondary typing combination across each one, but creating a type triangle that works well is tricky, because you can't have too many resistances. Dragon makes things complicated. Fairy would be powerful, but you've got immunities to consider. There's a whole lot of things you have to try and get balanced. These next Pokemon are ones that are typically bumped into in the early routes and some of the first captures for a new trainer. The first route is going to be the regional mammal, which is typically a normal type based on some sort of common animal, and usually the Pokemon only evolves once. Rattata, Sentret, Zigzagoon, Bidoof, Patrat, Bunnelby, Yungoos, Wooloo, and Lechonk are the entries here, but I can't think of a mammal that Greece is overtly known for other than maybe lamb, goats. But if you look in mythology, you could maybe consider the ram who made the Golden Fleece, which could be a regional variant of Wooloo. The second trope is regional birds. These are typically normal flying types, although there have been some diversity in later generations. Pidgey, Hoot, Tailo, Starly, Pidove, Fletchling, Pikipek, Rookidee are the ones that we think of as being regional birds, with some debate whether there is one at all in Paldea. For my money, I think the Wattrel is the regional bird for Paldea, not Flamingo, who admittedly can be caught sooner, but doesn't really fit into the vibe of a regional bird. They tend to start small and then grow into a big bully bird. If we wanted to pick a bird for Gen 10, we could look into mythology and the Stymphalian birds from Labours of Hercules. The gods all have their own birds too, so we could look at owls for Athena or eagles for Zeus, and they could all fit pretty well. Finally, for the common ecology, we have the regional insects. These are often found on the first few routes as well. If not in the forest, you tend to come across pretty early on. And actually, thinking about it, that's a hell of a trope as well. There's always been a forest of some description. Caterpie, Weedle, Spinnerack, Ladybug, Wurmple, Cricketot, Burmy, Venipede, Sewaddle, Scatterbug, Grubbin, Blipbug, and Nimble are the bugs that we see running around our Pokedex. Greece has a lot of the European insects, but there is a specific type of stick insect that could fit in here. We haven't had a stick insect Pokemon, so maybe a grass bug type would be on the cards. Once we get out of the early routes, let's have a look at the rest of the game. Pika Clone! Pichu, Plusle, Minun, Pachirisu, Emolga, Dedenne, Togedemaru, Morpeko, and Pawmot are all these Pokemon who fit into this Pika Clone nonsense. There's also some who believe that Marill was Pika Blue and therefore is the true Pika Clone of Johto, but given that the definition seems to be electric-type rodent, no. Marmots, Gerbils, and Flying Squirrels have all been used as inspiration, so if we're sticking with Greece, we could see a Crete Spiny Mouse. Regional fish. There are fish everywhere in the Pokemon world. Some examples include Magikarp, Goldeen, Remoraid, Feebas, Finneon, Basculin, Clauncher, Wishiwashi, Barraskewda, and Veluza. I guess there's also Tatsugiri, which is a fish. Or some of it. Picking a particular fish is tricky, given that the fish don't seem to be related to their region in any way whatsoever. And I don't know what to pick here, but Greece is known for its sea ring. Yeah, that's kind of weak. Fossils. Yes, the fossils could make a return here. You can dig up Pokemon from the past and give them a new rocky form. Mostly Kabuto, Omanyte, Aerodactyl, Anorith, Lileep, Craniodus, Sheldon, Darkin, Tortuga, Aurorus, and Tyrant have that rock typing thrown in, with the monstrosity fossils of Dracovish, Arctovish, Arctozolt, and Dracozolt being the exceptions. Paldea again breaks some of this trend by not having fossil Pokemon, although admittedly neither did Johto, but that's connected to Kanto with the same landmass, so it makes sense they have the same fossils. On Paldea though, I think adding a fossil would have been overshadowed by the literal Pokemon of the past. A fossil for Gen 10 is more likely to be marine in nature, given that there weren't a huge amount of mammalian fossils ever found in Greece, except for giraffes and mastodons, because at the time of the dinosaurs, Greece was underwater in the Tethys Sea, so maybe something like a Relicanth spin-off could be found down there. Box Art Legendary. This one didn't really start until Gen 2, with Ho-Oh and Lugia appearing on the box, along with Suicune for Crystal. These Pokemon are typically stronger than the other legendaries in their game specifically, and are some sort of focus into the story. I think it's an interesting change that probably helped Pokemon survive, because from Gen 2 onwards, you could have a really cool, very powerful Pokemon through to the final gym, and onto the Elite Four by your side. Although, having said that, it wasn't really a thing in Gen 9. Koraidon and Miraidon were just there as a different narrative device, and I don't object to that change. Man, Paldea's ruined these troops. Thanks, Roy Coco. Legendary Trio. Ish. This one might need some explaining. We can all name the big trios from the early games. The Legendary Birds, the Beasts were the first two trios, along with the Golems and the Weather Trio of Hoenn, and then the Creation and Lake Trios from Sinnoh. Then in Unova we had three more, the Tau Trio, the Swords of Justice, and the Weather Kami. In Kalos we had Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde, along with the Light Trio of Alola, but we also had the Guardian Deities, which made a return of the secondary legendary group. In Gala, Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus are listed as being the Combat Trio, but I call nonsense on that one. Zacian and Zamazenta are a duo, much like Latios and Latias, and Eternatus is more like Mewtwo, an additional Pokemon who's just there to be super tough at the end of the game. Instead, I think the true trio of Gala is the new version of the birds, and more on them later. And in Gen 9, we have the Treasures of Ruin as the in-game legendaries, but the trio that came along in the DLC, the Loyal 3. Except, well, not all of these are trios anymore. The Swords of Justice had the mythical Pokemon Keldeo join them, the D'Artagnan to the Three Musketeers, which, by the way, I think is kind of funny that they added D'Artagnan in a game where they added Darmanitan. That's just me, I like the wordplay. This one's not so bad because it makes some sort of narrative sense, but for the genies, we had an introduction in Legends Arceus of Enamorus 12 years later. And the introduction came in the past. I haven't really seen a good explanation as to why Enamorus disappeared for 150 years, but it might be out there somewhere. The Regis are worse because their trio master Regigigas couldn't stop creating things and formed Regidrago and Regieleki from energy. Maybe there'll be more Regis coming along at some point, I don't know. But this brings me to the most recent trope, refreshing previous legendaries. The evidence is clear here. We have regional forms of the legendary birds, the beasts got past paradox forms with the Swords of Justice getting their future paradox forms, and the aforementioned genies and golems. This suggests to me that there will be something for either the Lake Trio or for the Guardian Deities. I think the Guardian Deities are more likely, given that the Lake Trio were somewhat important in Legends Arceus, and they didn't get anything there. Then again, I don't really know what could have been done there. And I don't really know what could be done with the Guardians. Maybe something like a fusion, like the Tau Trio have, or more likely, there's going to be a fifth Guardian who watches over all of them. There's a lot of islands in Greece, so a new Island Guardian isn't out of the question. The last things to think about are the pseudo-legendaries. A 3-stage evolutionary Pokemon with a final stage having a base stat total of 600 in the slow experience group. This includes Dragonite, Tyranitar, Salamence, Metagross, Garchomp, Hydreigon, Goodra, Kommo-o, Dragapult, and Arctibax. I would really like for this new pseudo-legendary to not have the Dragon type, but I feel like it's kind of inevitable at this point. If this region is based on Greece, then something aligned to the monsters of mythology like Scylla, the 6-headed man-eater who tormented Odysseus, would do. Maybe a Cyclops or the Hecatoncheires, the 100-handed ones, would be really interesting to see. Thank you so much for watching and listening to my thoughts on what I think will come in Gen 10, whether it will be a general trope that we've had for all of the Pokemon games or something that's based off of Legends EA. Let me know in the comments below what you think is going to come along, are there any tropes that I've missed, and we'll see you again very soon. Take care.